The term white-collar crime was coined by Edwin Sutherland in 1939, defining it as crime by an individual of a high social status and respect in their area of occupation. He also added that these crimes could be committed by legal firms and corporations. The FBI defines white-collar crime as those illegal acts which are characterized by deceit, concealment, or violation of trust, and which are not dependent upon the application or threat of physical force or violence. Corporate crimes, more specifically, deal with the company as a whole. The crime itself benefits the investors or top individuals in the corporation or company. The estimated cost of white-collar crime to the United States each year is between $300 and $660 billion. There are a lot of ways to commit corporate crime. Here are a few of the ways corporate crime is committed. Corporate espionage occurs between companies and is often done to gain intellectual property, disclosed information, or trade secrets. Corporate espionage can also be done by a company to the government. For example, a company may do this to see what other companies' contracts include and to underbid them. Corporate espionage is getting a lot easier with advancements in technology. Collective embezzlement is when a company has been entrusted with money or property and appropriates it for their own use and benefit. Control fraud occurs when a trusted person in a high position of responsibility goes behind their company and engages in extensive fraud for personal gain. Insider trading, which is on a more personal level, is when a person uses inside, confidential, or advanced information to trade in shares of publicly held corporations. There are a few theories that I thought worked best when it came to explaining why corporate crime is committed. One theory I found was the economic theory of crime. This theory suggests that corporate crime is committed because the offenders believe the expected benefit outweighs the costs. These criminals tend to be older and more mature compared to street criminals. The reason they commit these crimes is to make gains financially. This theory also is a lot like the rational choice theory, which states that a person acts by measuring the benefits against costs to arrive at the final action, which exploits personal advantage. In relation to crime, this theory assumes that criminals make rational decisions to commit crime by reviewing all possibilities and outcomes, although criminals tend to never think of prison as a possibility. Another theory is the theory of differential association by Edwin Sutherland. This is a learning theory. This theory states that criminal behavior emerges when a person is associated with other people who behave in such a way that values this kind of behavior as a positive. The learning process depends on the amount of contact with the individuals. The most intense interactions occur in small groups of people. In a corporate setting, individuals will see the higher-ups are behaving in a way, and employees will follow their patterns even if they are deviant. This is especially true in cases where employees' futures depend on the higher-ups' opinions of them. Some scholars believe that corporate crime is rising because of social developments. With easier communication within and to other corporations, companies are able to do more business, and this in turn leads to more business crime. Technology is having a huge effect on corporate crime also. Businessmen are beginning to be able to gain so much by putting in such little effort to get it.
University law professor John Coffey says the crackdown will deter white-collar crime.
The likelihood of apprehension is the greatest deterrent to crime, and that's even truer in the case of white-collar crime, because most white-collar crime is committed by people who have assets, who are not penniless, who are subject to loss of reputation, loss of financial assets, and have other alternatives.
There are a few things that a lot of scholars seem to agree on that needs to be done in order to better prevent corporate crime. First of all, there needs to be changes in the structure of companies that reduces the opportunity of white-collar criminals to commit crime, specifically over the internet. There needs to be better security and more safeguards. The next thing that needs to be changed is business culture. If white-collar crime is simply accepted or even encouraged, then something needs to be changed within the culture of these businesses that portrays white-collar crime as a problem that needs to stop. This could be done by restructuring businesses with new rules and ethics to follow, but this would not change things very fast. Lastly, there needs to be changes in law enforcement and the laws concerning white-collar crime. Law enforcement needs to put more focus on white-collar crime. It's a big issue that needs to be dealt with more effectively. If people who plan to commit white-collar crime notice that law enforcement is stepping up and doing more about it, like fining people or sending them to prison, then these criminals will think twice about committing the crimes if the risk is getting higher and higher. Also, if there were steeper laws and punishments for white-collar crime, it would be a deterrent for these individuals, because the risks of their crime would outweigh the benefits.
A new report out of Syracuse University presents some unpleasant information about the Obama administration's approach to white-collar crime. According to the report, prosecution of corporate crime has fallen by almost 30% in the last 10 years. These are for instances of corporate fraud, abuse, and mismanagement. But just because prosecutions have fallen, don't fall into the trap of believing that crime is going away. Quite the opposite is true. According to the report, the instances of prosecutable violations is increasing every year, even though actual prosecutions are falling to near record lows. And wouldn't you know it, this all goes back to Eric Holder. During the Clinton administration, Holder served as Deputy Attorney General, where he issued a memo to his fellow prosecutors in 1999, warning them that they need to consider the, quote, collateral consequences, including disproportionate harm to shareholders and employees not proven personally culpable in prosecuting Wall Street. Shortly after that memo was issued, Clinton left office, but that theme of the perils of prosecution lived on with the Bush administration, and then it was put on steroids when Eric Holder returned to the Justice Department during the Obama administration. Here is a refresher on corporate crime, in case anyone watching this program has forgotten. We know today there is ample evidence and even admissions from some of the world's largest banks that these financial institutions were handing out loans to people who could not afford them, then jacking up those interest rates, then taking out insurance on those mortgages so that when they defaulted, the banks would make even more money. They knew that these loans were fraudulent, they knew they would be foreclosed, and they knew they would make a killing off it. These same banks were lying to investors about the safety of their investments while charging fees even when they knew that they were going to lose that person's life savings. They manipulated interest rates to gouge consumers and line their own pockets. They committed fraud at every single level. They lied to members of Congress. And they gave themselves massive multi-million-dollar bonuses for being such good criminals. Not one of the people who committed any of these crimes ever saw the inside of a courtroom, much less a jail cell. And it's all because Eric Holder, corporate America's favorite attorney, convinced 3 different presidential administrations that prosecuting banking criminals would have a bad effect on the economy, which is completely untrue, by the way. So thanks, Eric Holder, for letting the banks get away with murder while the bottom 99% struggle to make ends meet after being screwed over by your corporate clients.